Have you ever poured yourself a glass of orange juice first thing in the morning because you thought it was the healthiest way to start your day, only to feel unusually tired, hungry, or even shaky before lunch? If you have, I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to share could completely change the way you think about your mornings. I'm practicing internal medicine in the United States for over 20 years, and if there's one mistake I've watched thousands of my patients make, it's this: they focus on what they eat for breakfast, but they completely ignore what they drink before breakfast. Surprisingly, that's often where the real problem begins. Now let me ask you something. If I told you there was one simple morning drink that could help support healthier blood sugar levels naturally, without expensive supplements, complicated meal plans, or trendy internet miracle cures, would you believe me? Most people don't. In fact, neither did one of my patients. Let's call him Robert. Robert was a 58-year-old retired firefighter from Phoenix, Arizona. He was strong, disciplined, had never smoked, and walked every single morning. Yet every routine blood test told the same frustrating story. His fasting blood sugar kept climbing, 104. Then one morning, it reached 126. He looked at me and quietly said, "Doctor, I don't understand. I'm doing everything right." Maybe you've said those exact words yourself, or maybe someone in your family has. Because here's what most people never realize: blood sugar doesn't suddenly become a problem overnight. It builds quietly and silently, often years before diabetes is ever diagnosed. That's what makes it so dangerous. And that's exactly why I decided to make this video, not to scare you, but to help you understand something I wish more people knew much earlier. Before we go any further, I need to be very clear about something. This video is not about replacing your medications. It's not about promising magical results. And it's definitely not about those fake online blood sugar hacks that spread across social media every week. As a physician, I don't believe in shortcuts. I believe in science. I believe in habits. And most importantly, I believe in understanding why your body responds the way it does. Because once you understand that, everything changes. Now let me ask you another question. What do you normally drink within the first 30 minutes after waking up? Coffee, orange juice, apple juice, a smoothie, or maybe nothing at all? Take a second and think about it, because your answer matters more than you probably realize. Here's something that often surprises my patients: your body behaves very differently in the morning than it does in the afternoon or evening. When you wake up, several hormones naturally rise to prepare your body for the day. One of those hormones encourages your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. It's a completely normal process, but if you unknowingly add the wrong drink on top of that, you may be giving your body far more sugar than it actually needs. Over time, that repeated morning spike can become a much bigger problem than most people imagine. This is where many people get confused. They assume that if something is labeled a natural, it must automatically be healthy. Unfortunately, nature doesn't always mean low sugar. Some drinks that carry a healthy reputation contain enough natural sugars to raise blood glucose surprisingly fast, especially on an empty stomach. I've watched this happen over and over again in my clinic. Patients would proudly tell me they had replaced soda with fruit juice because they thought they were making the healthiest decision possible. Yet weeks later, their glucose numbers barely changed. Some even became worse, not because they were lazy, not because they lacked discipline, but simply because nobody had ever explained what was really happening inside their bodies. And honestly, I don't blame them. Nutrition advice today is incredibly confusing. One expert tells you to drink fruit juice. Another says never touch it. Someone online recommends a detox drink, while someone else claims apple cider vinegar cures everything. So who are you supposed to believe? That's exactly why I want to simplify this. Today, we're going to separate facts from marketing, science from myths, and habits that genuinely support healthy blood sugar from those that only sound healthy. But before I reveal the morning drink I personally recommend to many of my patients, there's one important piece of the puzzle you absolutely need to understand first. Because if you skip this next step, you could accidentally turn even a healthy drink into something that works against your blood sugar instead of. Before I tell you what I recommend my patients drink in the morning, I want to share something that completely changed the way I looked at blood sugar, and honestly, it surprised me too. Several years ago, I attended an endocrinology conference in Chicago where physicians from across the country were discussing one question: The discussion wasn't about expensive medications. It wasn't about the newest diabetes technology. It was about something much simpler: morning physiology. That conversation completely changed the way I explained blood sugar to my patients, because I realized most people weren't failing. They were simply missing one important piece of the puzzle. You see, your body doesn't wake up the same way your mind does. Long before your alarm clock rings, your brain signals the release of hormones like cortisol and glucagon. Their job is to prepare you for the day by telling your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. This natural process is often called dawn phenomenon, and it happens whether you're diabetic or not. The difference is that a healthy body usually responds by releasing just the right amount of insulin to keep blood sugar balanced. But if your body has become insulin resistant, or you're in the early stages of prediabetes, that balancing act becomes much harder. In other words, your blood sugar may already be climbing before your feet even touch the floor. Now imagine what happens next. You wake up, your blood sugar is already slightly elevated because of those natural hormones, and before eating anything, you drink a large glass of fruit juice, a sweetened coffee, or one of those bottled healthy breakfast smoothies. It's almost like pouring gasoline onto a small fire. Again, I'm not saying these drinks are evil. I'm saying that timing matters. Your body in the morning is not the same as your body after lunch or dinner. Once my patients understood that simple idea, many of them started making much smarter choices without feeling like they had to completely change their lives. Let me tell you about another patient. Her name is Linda, a 64-year-old elementary school teacher from Columbus, Ohio. Every morning she blended bananas, mangoes, orange juice, and honey into what she proudly called her power smoothie. She smiled and told me, "It has fruit, it has vitamins, and there's no added sugar." She genuinely believed she was making the healthiest possible choice. But when we reviewed the readings from her continuous glucose monitor, something immediately stood out. Within an hour of drinking that smoothie, her blood sugar had climbed dramatically. She looked at me in disbelief and asked, "So, fruit is bad?" I smiled and said, "No, the fruit isn't the problem. The amount, the combination, and the timing are." That's an important distinction. Too many conversations about nutrition focus on labeling foods as either good or bad. Real medicine isn't that simple. It's about understanding how your body responds. The same food can affect two different people in completely different ways. That's why I always encourage my patients to stop chasing trends and start paying attention to patterns. Your body gives you feedback every single day. You just have to learn how to listen to it. Now let me ask you another question. Have you ever noticed that you're extremely hungry just 2 or 3 hours after breakfast? Maybe you find yourself reaching for a donut in the office break room, grabbing a muffin with your coffee, or buying a snack from the vending machine before noon. Many people assume they simply lack willpower, but in many cases, that's not what's happening at all. Rapid blood sugar spikes are often followed by rapid drops, and when your blood sugar falls quickly, your brain sends a very powerful message: find food. That's why so many people experience intense mid-morning cravings. It isn't always about hunger. Sometimes it's simply biology. And once you understand that, everything begins to make a lot more sense. This is also why I caution my patients against believing every viral health trend they see online. One week everyone is drinking celery juice. The next week it's lemon water. Then it's flavored detox powders with promises of resetting your metabolism. The truth is that most of those claims have little or no solid scientific evidence behind them. As physicians, we're trained to ask a very different question, not what's popular. Instead, we ask, what consistently works for most people based on reliable evidence. That's a completely different conversation, and it's one that often leads to much simpler answers than people expect. Over the years, I've noticed something interesting. The patients who improved their blood sugar the most weren't necessarily the ones following extreme diets or buying expensive supplements every month. Instead, they focused on small habits they could repeat every single morning. Consistency almost always outperformed perfection. They didn't need to be perfect every day. They just needed to make slightly better choices more often than not. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, "Doctor, if so many common breakfast drinks can work against healthy blood sugar, then what should I actually drink?" That's the question almost every patient asks me before they leave my office. And in just a moment, I'll tell you the morning drink I personally recommend most often, not because it's trendy, but because it supports hydration, works with your body's natural physiology, and fits easily into everyday life. But before I reveal it, there's one common mistake that causes many people to use even the right drink the wrong way. If you don't know this one detail, you could miss most of the benefit without ever realizing why. Now, let's answer the question you've been waiting for. What is the morning drink I recommend most often to patients who want to support healthier blood sugar levels naturally? The answer surprises almost everyone. It's not an expensive superfood. It's not a detox drink. It's not a bottled product with flashy marketing. And it's certainly not one of those so-called miracle supplements that flood social media every week. The first drink I recommend is something incredibly simple, a large glass of plain water. Yes, just water. I know that's probably not the answer you expected. In fact, every time I say this in my office, I usually get the same reaction. That's it, doctor, just water. And my answer is always the same, not just water, the right habit at the right time. Here's why. After 6 to 8 hours of sleep, your body naturally wakes up slightly dehydrated. Even mild dehydration can make your blood more concentrated, which may make your glucose readings appear higher than they otherwise would. Your kidneys also rely on proper hydration to function efficiently, and staying hydrated supports the body's normal processes for managing glucose. By drinking a full glass of water before anything else, you're helping your body recover from those overnight hours without immediately introducing sugar or unnecessary calories into your system. It's one of the simplest habits you can build, yet it's often one of the most overlooked. Unfortunately, this is where many people make another mistake. They assume that if water is good, adding more ingredients must make it even better. Suddenly they're squeezing several lemons into it, adding honey, stirring in flavored syrups, or buying expensive wellness powders that promise dramatic results. Before they know it, what started as a healthy glass of water has turned into another sugary beverage hiding behind clever marketing. The healthiest habit often becomes the most complicated one, and that's exactly what I try to help my patients avoid. Now, does that mean you should never add anything to your water? Not necessarily. For some of my patients, I recommend adding a small squeeze of fresh lemon, not because lemon magically lowers blood sugar, but because it encourages them to drink more water consistently. And consistency is what matters. Science has never shown that lemon water alone can cure diabetes or reverse insulin resistance. If someone promises you otherwise, I want you to be cautious. Medicine rarely works that way. Real health improvements almost always come from simple habits repeated over time, not miracle ingredients. I remember a patient named George from Dallas, Texas. George loved trying every health trend he discovered online. One month he was drinking charcoal water. The next month it was cinnamon water. After that came cucumber detox water. Every appointment, he walked into my office smiling and said, "Doctor, I found another miracle drink." But every time we checked his blood work, nothing had changed. His fasting glucose stayed almost exactly where it had been before. Finally, I asked him a different question. "George, instead of searching for the perfect drink, what if we focused on building the perfect morning routine?" He looked at me for a few seconds, smiled, and admitted, "I've never thought about it that way." Over the next 3 months, George stopped chasing internet trends. Instead, he committed to a routine he could actually maintain. Every morning he drank a large glass of water after waking up. He took a 20-minute walk around his neighborhood before work. He ate a breakfast built around protein and fiber instead of sugary cereals. He took his prescribed medications exactly as directed and made a serious effort to improve his sleep schedule. 3 months later, his fasting blood sugar had improved, his energy levels were noticeably higher, he had lost several pounds, and perhaps most importantly, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Doctor, for the first time in years, I finally feel like I'm in control instead of my blood sugar controlling me." Now, was that because of the water alone? Absolutely not. And that's the lesson I wish more people understood. Healthy blood sugar is almost never the result of one magical food or one magical drink. It's usually the result of several small habits working together every single day. I often compare it to building a house. One brick doesn't build the house. But if you keep laying one brick after another, eventually you create something incredibly strong. Healthy habits work exactly the same way. Each one seems small on its own, but together they can completely change the direction of your health over time. Now here's where the story becomes even more interesting. After starting with water, there is another morning drink that I recommend to many of my patients, provided they don't have medical conditions that would make it inappropriate. Research suggests this beverage contains beneficial plant compounds, may support insulin sensitivity in some people, and contains virtually no sugar when prepared correctly. But there are two important conditions. The timing has to be right, and the preparation has to be right. Most people unknowingly get both of those wrong. In fact, one version of this drink that's sold in many coffee shops contains enough added sugar to completely cancel the benefits people think they're getting. So before you rush into your kitchen thinking you've already guessed the answer, let me show you exactly which drink I'm talking about, who may benefit from it, who should speak with their healthcare provider before drinking it regularly, and the one simple mistake that turns a healthy morning choice into a blood sugar disaster. So now we've reached the final piece of the puzzle. We've talked about what happens inside your body before you even get out of bed. We've explored why so many drinks that are advertised as healthy can actually work against stable blood sugar when consumed first thing in the morning. And we've seen why one of the simplest habits, starting your day with a large glass of plain water, is often the foundation that people overlook. But I also promised you there was another morning drink I frequently recommend to many of my patients: unsweetened green tea, not bottled green tea loaded with sweeteners, not the flavored versions from coffee shops, not the sugary drinks sitting in convenience store refrigerators. I'm talking about plain, freshly brewed, unsweetened green tea. Before you rush into your kitchen, though, let me explain why I recommend it, and why how you prepare it matters just as much as the tea itself. Green tea contains natural plant compounds called catechins, especially one known as EGCG. Researchers have spent years studying these compounds because they appear to support the body's ability to use insulin more efficiently in some people. Green tea may also support heart health and help reduce inflammation, both of which are important for people living with diabetes or prediabetes. But I want you to notice the word I keep using: may ask. I didn't say it will. I didn't say guarantees. Medicine doesn't deal in guarantees. It deals in evidence, probabilities, and consistent results over time. That's an important distinction, and it's one every responsible physician should make. Whenever someone tells you one drink will completely solve your blood sugar problems, your first reaction shouldn't be excitement. It should be healthy skepticism. That's why I always tell my patients to think of green tea as a helpful teammate, not the star player. The real stars are still the fundamentals: eating balanced meals rich in protein and fiber, staying physically active, getting enough sleep, managing stress, maintaining a healthy weight, and taking prescribed medications exactly as directed. Green tea doesn't replace those habits. It simply complements them. When people expect one drink to do all the work, they usually end up disappointed. But when they combine small healthy habits together, that's when meaningful changes often begin to happen. Let me tell you about one final patient. Her name was Susan, a 61-year-old grandmother from Denver, Colorado. The first time she walked into my office, she looked exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. She told me she had spent years searching for the one food, the one supplement, the one drink that would finally fix her blood sugar. She had ordered products from television advertisements, bought expensive supplements she found online, and tried almost every trending health drink that appeared on social media. Some promised results in 7 days. Others claimed they could naturally reverse diabetes. None of them delivered what they promised. During our first appointment, she looked at me and asked a question I'll never forget. "Doctor, if you were me, where would you start?" I smiled, reached for a blank sheet of paper, and began writing. I didn't write the name of an expensive supplement. I didn't recommend a miracle drink. Instead, I wrote down 5 simple habits. First, drink a full glass of water immediately after waking up. Second, if you enjoy it and your healthcare provider agrees it's appropriate for you, have a cup of freshly brewed, unsweetened green tea later in the morning. Third, eat a breakfast built around protein, healthy fats, and fiber instead of refined sugars. Fourth, take a 20 to 30-minute walk most days of the week, even if it's just around your neighborhood. And finally, make sleep a priority whenever possible, aiming for 7 to 8 hours each night. Susan looked down at the list, smiled, and laughed. "That's it?" she asked. I nodded and replied, "That's it." 6 months later, Susan returned for her follow-up appointment. Her fasting blood sugar had improved. She had lost weight without following an extreme diet. Her energy had returned, and she felt stronger than she had in years. But the numbers on her lab report weren't what made me happiest. It was something she said before leaving my office. She smiled and told me, "Doctor, for the first time in years, I stopped looking for shortcuts." At that moment, I knew she had finally understood the lesson that so many people miss. Better health doesn't usually come from finding the perfect product. It comes from building the right habits and repeating them long enough for your body to benefit from them. That's the lesson I hope you take away from this video as well. The biggest mistake I see isn't drinking the wrong beverage. It's believing that one drink alone can solve a problem that often develops over many years. Real health rarely comes from dramatic changes. It comes from small decisions repeated consistently. One healthy morning becomes another. One good choice leads to the next. 1 week becomes 1 month. 1 month becomes 1 year. And before you realize it, those ordinary habits begin creating extraordinary results. So tomorrow morning, before you automatically reach for that sugary juice or order that oversized flavored coffee, pause for just a moment and ask yourself once, is this helping the person I want to become? Sometimes the healthiest choice isn't the most exciting one. It's simply the one your body has quietly needed all along. If today's video helped you understand your morning routine a little better, I'd encourage you to share it with someone you care about, a parent, a spouse, a sibling, or a close friend. Rising blood sugar often develops silently, and many people don't realize they're heading toward prediabetes until years later. One conversation today could inspire someone to make a healthier decision tomorrow. And before I say goodbye, I want to leave you with one final thought. Every single morning your body gives you another opportunity to care for it, not with fear, not with perfection, and certainly not with miracle cures, but with informed, consistent choices backed by science. As your doctor, that's what I hope you'll remember, not just tomorrow morning, but every morning that follows. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.